Having its roots in the 1600s, the metric system was developed in revolutionary France.
I love cake so much!
Marie Antoinette sure likes cake, Mr. Peabody.
Although slow to take off at first, its adoption increased steadily after France made the system compulsory in 1840. Today, it is the system of measurement in many parts of the world and throughout the global scientific community. For this reason, it might be better to ask why there are still some countries, like the US, Myanmar, and Liberia, and in some circumstances the UK, that still use imperial measurements. But what is it? The metric system is defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary as a decimal system of weights and measures based on the meter and on the kilogram. Great, but why is it important? To answer this, it is useful to explore the system's history. Before the metric system was devised, many countries, and even regions within a country, had their own units of measure. They were, in theory at least, based on similar units, feet, inches, pounds, gallons, etc., but tended to vary widely in practice. There was no standard foot or gallon, while trade was primarily localized.
Oh, thank goodness, brave adventurer. I'm a poor fruit salesman and I need to sell my fruit.
This was not necessarily a problem, but as the world became more interconnected and global trade flourished, it soon became necessary for some standards of measure to be developed. This was especially true as the Age of Enlightenment dawned, and philosophers, a term which included scientists, argued the need for standardized measurements to make communication easier. One of the first such standardized systems was proposed by an English cleric called John Wilkins in the 1600s. Wilkins proposed a unit of length called the standard, which was the length of a pendulum that had a half beat of 1 second. His units of area and volume were the square and the cubic standard, and his proposed unit of mass was the mass of a cubic standard of rainwater. 2 years later, a French clergyman, Gabriel Mouton, proposed a unit of length based on 1 minute of arc of a great circle of the earth. This is now the measurement of a nautical mile. Mouton also developed a system for naming the multiples and divisions of the basic unit of length. This idea of standardization was an innovation at the time. However, the time was not yet right for the introduction of a new system, while some other prominent historical figures, like Thomas Jefferson, would also propose similar systems. It was the political and technological changes stemming from the French Revolution in the 1790s that would make a new system possible. In 1790, in the midst of the French Revolution, the National Assembly of France requested that the French Academy of Sciences create a standard for weights and measures. A commission was appointed, sponsored by the Bishop of Autun, who is better known as Talleyrand. The commission was tasked with creating a unified logical system of measurements that was, as French philosopher the Marquis de Condorcet described, for all people, for all time. This system would be defined by measurements derived from nature, rather than arbitrary dictates. The French Commission took a very scientific approach while developing their system of measurements, and by the middle of the 1790s, the concept of the meter and the kilogram were established. One committee recommended a decimalized measurement system, based on a length equal to 1/10,000,000th of the length of a quadrant of the Earth's meridian, the distance between the equator and the North Pole. The measurements for volume and mass were derived from this unit of length. The basic unit of mass, the gram, was defined as the mass of 1 cubic centimeter of water at its temperature of maximum density. The liter was defined as the volume of a cubic decimeter. The commission also decided to make the system base 10. That is, larger and smaller multiples of each unit would be created by dividing the basic units by 10 and its powers. This made the system much easier to use than previous systems, which required division by 16 to convert ounces to pounds, or 12 inches to feet. The French Revolutionary government officially adopted the new system in 1795. but it would take some time to disseminate around the world. In fact, France herself would only make it compulsory in 1840. In 1875, an international agreement known as the Convention of the Meter set up international standards for metric length and mass, as well as permanent mechanisms to make refinements in the metric system. This agreement, sometimes called the Treaty of the Meter, was signed by 17 countries, including the United States.
Chafee said an important part of his platform is getting the U.S. to finally adopt the metric system.
Let's join the rest of the world and go metric.
All right. Okay, it's a metric crowd. All right.
From 1893, these metric standards have also served as the fundamental measurement standards of the United States. The non-metric units in common use are actually defined in terms of the metric standards. In 1960, the General Conference on Weights and Measures, made up of the nations which had signed the Convention of the Meter, adopted a simplification of the system. 7 units: the meter, the kilogram, the second, the ampere, the Kelvin, the mole, and the candela were established as base units for the system. The revised system was named the Système International des Unités, International System of Units. Older measurements like the gallon would continue in some areas. But now back to the question at hand. As we have seen, the metric system is, quite simply, a more systematic approach to measuring things. For this reason, the metric system proved to be a relatively easy concept to adopt and replicate. The standardization of the system also made comparing measurements between things very simple and coherent. Not only that, but as units of different things like volume, mass, or distance were all interrelated, it was much easier to calculate and convert between them. For engineering and the sciences, this has proved to be incredibly powerful. From the atomic realm to the universe as a whole, the same units of measure, albeit at varying orders of magnitude apart, can now be used.
To the metric system.